This is the initial setup for the USSR in the BBR rules. Virtually identical to out-of-box Global 1940, but here we go. All right, in terms of naval forces, up in C-Zone 127, there's a submarine. In C-Zone 115, there is a submarine and a cruiser. In Karelia, up at the top there are 2 infantry. In Vyborg, adjacent to Karelia, there are 3 infantry. In Novgorod, you have a fighter, 2 anti-aircraft artillery, 1 regular artillery, and 6 infantry. Note too that Novgorod's IPC value has changed from 2 to 3. That's what the black die is there to represent. The Baltic states, there are 3 infantry. Eastern Poland, there are 2 infantry. Bessarabia, there are 2 infantry. Western Ukraine, there's an infantry and an artillery. Ukraine, 3 infantry, and a minor factory, by the way. Volgograd, mechanized infantry and tank, and a minor factory. Caucasus, 2 infantry. And Russia itself, 1 tank, 1 artillery, 1 mechanized infantry, 1 regular infantry, 2 anti-aircraft artillery, a fighter, and a tactical bomber, along with, of course, a major factory. Now, moving into the east, you may notice, again, I'm using an older map, but to represent that, I've got these rail features on here. The Trans-Siberian Railway runs from Russia all the way over, if we look at the east here, all the way over to Amur. The way the Trans-Siberian Railway works, it can go in either direction and it can start anywhere on the track. But you can rail 1 unit during non-combat, 1 ground unit of any kind, the entire length of the railway. If the Axis takes any of those territories, then the rail is broken at that point, but it can be used up to the point where it's broken. Oh, I should mention as well, obviously, that in the Far East, in Buryatia, there are 6 infantry. In Sakha, there are 6 infantry and 2 anti-aircraft artillery. And in Amur, there are 6 infantry. There's also a couple of other IPC changes for the Russians. The Urals goes from 1 to 2. That should be up a little bit more. Yenisei and Yakut, which are over here, they go from 1 to 0. And way over there, Siberia goes from 1 to 2, and the Soviet Far East goes from 1 to 0. Siberia is an interesting one because technically what that means is you could build a factory there, and that's new for the BBR. Now, other things in terms of the BBR that might be of interest to Russia, when they are at war with any of the European Axis, they can move their factories, their minor factories, 1 space if they pay $1 to do so. Now, if they do that, the turn they do that, they can only produce 2 units instead of 3 units. And the automatic railways that you get from each factory do not play into that particular turn. So that's something to be aware of. Now, in terms of national objectives for the Soviet Union, again, all of these are once they're at war with Germany or Italy. They get 3 IPCs if they control Siberia, which is over there, the Urals, which is over here, and the Ukraine, which is over here. Those are what are called the resource bits. I didn't put those markers on yet, but those 3 places, plus a couple of other places, Manchuria and I can't remember the other one, but I'll get to it. But those are what are called resource territories. They get 5 IPCs if they own 3 of the 4 following territories. Novgorod, or Leningrad, Volgograd, or Stalingrad, the Baltic states, and eastern Poland. So if they own 3 of those 4 when they're at war, they get 5 IPCs. They get also 3 IPCs for each original German, Italian, or pro-Axis territory that they manage to control once they're at war. Now, from what I understand, BBR 3.0 is going to change that to 2 IPCs, but for now, it's 3. The other one that's changing, and this is kind of a big one, is they get 10 IPCs for liberating Manchuria, but that only happens the first time they liberate it. I understand in BBR 3.0 that's going to go down to 5 IPCs, but for now it's 10 IPCs. So the only other thing to talk about with Russia is Lend-Lease. Once they're at war with the European Axis, at the end of their turn during the collect income phase, they roll a die to see whether or not they get Lend-Lease. And if Archangel and C-Zone 126 are free of enemy units, they can get Lend-Lease in the west. And if C-Zone 4, which is way up here, and Amur are free in the east, they can get Lend-Lease there. And basically it's a roll of a die to see whether or not they get a unit or some extra money to put in their treasury. So that's Russia set up. I will move the camera again so you can have a better look at the setup in close. See what all is there. Oh, remember too the Mongolia rule. If Japan attacks any territories adjacent to Mongolia, or if it attacks Mongolian territories itself, which would be stupid because then that would turn the entire neutrals all across the board into pro-allied territories. But if they attack, say, Amur or Tunguska or any of the ones up here, if they get up into that range, then all of these automatically turn into Russian troops. If Russia attacks any Japanese-controlled territories that are adjacent to Mongolia, then they don't turn Japanese, but they turn strict neutral. Right now I've got these pro-Soviet markers on them to indicate that they are able to turn into Russian units if Japan does some things. So that's Russia initial setup. So again, feel free to pause the video at any time if you want to have a look at the board in detail. So I'll just add on really quickly, I just put these on the board. There are 5 territories that have these little gold bars associated with them. The Caucasus, Ukraine, the Urals, Siberia, and Manchuria. And there's 2 reasons why these resource areas are important to both the Axis and the Allies. It is a Russian national objective to keep Siberia, the Urals, and the Ukraine in order to get a national objective. I believe it's 3 IPCs. The other thing is that if the Axis controls 3 of them, and right now they only have 1, they have the one in Manchuria. If the Axis controls 3, that's a victory point. Okay, so I just put those little gold bars on there to represent the resources.